Good morning. Reverend Sarah has been serving the White Bear UU Church for 5 years and has accepted a new position in Richmond, Virginia. She is vice chair of UU Wellspring, a spiritual deepening program for congregations and individuals. Welcome, Reverend Sarah.
Good morning. I'm glad to see so many faces here today. I thought holiday weekend, no one will show up, but look at it, it's full. Glad you're all here. Our chalice lighting words come from Reverend Chip Roush. This week, as our nation celebrates independence and self-determination, may we also hear the religious call to interdependence and self-restraint. Those of us who pray to the God of our fathers, those who call down the moon, as did our foremothers in Salem and in indigenous villages all over this ancient continent, and those whose most trust in the scientific method, like our ancestors who experimented with kites and oxygen and forms of government. May we all join our voice and energies into a more perfect union of souls, of hearts, brains, and consciousness. So may we be. I now invite you to rise in body or in spirit to sing our hymn number 159. This is my song, Finlandia.
Sorry I can't be with you in person today, but I wanted to share this important story with you before the 4th of July. Sometimes we wonder, what can we even do to make some change? How can just one person make an impact on the world? Well, as a citizen of the United States, that's what this story is all about. What Can a Citizen Do? By Dave Eggers and Sean Harris. What in the world can a citizen do? Who can a citizen be? A citizen is just like you. A citizen can plant a tree. A citizen can help a neighbor. A citizen can join a cause. A citizen can write a letter. A citizen can help change laws. A citizen can right a wrong, and a citizen can turn things around. A citizen can get things right side that previously were upside down. A citizen should be engaged, and a citizen, well, they should care. A citizen should build things and save things. A citizen could be a bear. Yes, a citizen can be a bear, and a citizen can be a kid. A citizen can wear pink pants. A citizen cannot stay hid. A citizen's not what you are, it is entirely what you do. A citizen cannot forget the world is more than you. We are all part of a society, one full of joy and of pain. A land of latticed people, none of whom are the same. If we just help one lonely soul, we open doors, we bring in light, and we bind us all and make us whole. So forget yourself for a second. Grab a shovel or a pen. Do something for another, and don't doubt that you can. Everything makes an impact on a bigger big than you. And it all started with the question, what can a citizen do? I really like how that says that a citizen can be a kid or a bear, jokingly, or anyone, really. Anyone who cares about what's happening in the world can be a citizen and make change. Because only when we work together and make our voices heard, that's the only time that real change can occur.
If there are any kids present this morning who would like to, I invite you to follow Chantel to kids programming right out this door.
Good morning. It is good to be with you. I invite you to settle in here as we create a place of communal caring and connection. It's our time to pause amidst the busyness of our lives, to slow down enough to consider the beauty that is here all around us, and to open a space for listening and love. Here, we honor all who support us in this caring, loving, and all-inclusive ministry. We send gratitude to Vicki Wolf, serving as our caring coordinator, arranging care for our members and friends in need for the last 2 weeks. Colleen Murphy will take over tomorrow for the next 2, and we thank her for that. The members of our caring committee are wonderful examples of our compassionate community, holding us up as we go through challenging and happy times. And life can be challenging. We could all use some extra support with what life throws at us. And if you are experiencing those challenges in your life, we encourage you to reach out for support and help. If you need additional care or personal pastoral care, please reach out to Reverend Luke or myself with that request. So as we settle into this shared space today, I ask you now to breathe deep the breath of life. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning, and above you the sky and the stars shining with ancient light, holding you in this space, yourself made of earth and stars. Sit deeply here in this community of love and justice, hope and grace. Know that here you are named and you are known as beloved. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God of many names and beyond all naming, we hold in our hearts all those who suffer in mind, body, or spirit. I invite you to bring the names you are holding in your heart this day, in joy or sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. For all those names spoken and unspoken, may we be held in love and grace. These words of meditation are by Dory Sommers, entitled A House for Our Dreams. We, all of us, build houses for our dreams, the masonry and lumber, glass and tiles, a solid form wherein we see our hopes, a shelter and protection for our growth. This house shall be a dwelling place for courage, for integrity, for love, engendered, nourished by a family that speaks of we and means all humankind. These walls shall represent the privacy and dignity of individuals, the open doors, a welcome to all people, all ages, and all generations. The windows shall keep light of inquiry illuminating from outside and within. May all words spoken here be born of love and energy rekindle in the hearts of those who dreamed this house, who piled the tools and paid the price to actualize the dream. May dreaming never cease for those within who know the world to be a troubled place, but dare to struggle with imperfectness toward that brighter hope, that better day. Let memories add warmth, a heritage, a quilted patchwork stitched with history, of kindness, of daring for the good, of funny moments, jokes and smiles and tears. This is a precious place, as every home that shelters those who love and strive and share. Its blessing is in lives that meet within, in living, learning, caring, sheltered here. May the faith in the Spirit of life, love for the community of earth, and love for the light in each other be ours now and in all the days to come. And please remain seated as we sing together hymn number 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness.
The first reading is Dependence Day by John Daniel. It would be a quieter holiday, no fireworks or loud parades, no speeches, no salutes to any flag. A day of staying home instead of crowding away. A day we celebrate nothing gained in war, but what we're given. How the sun's warmth is democratic, touching everyone, and the rain is democratic too. How the strongest branches in the wind give themselves as they resist and give themselves. How birds could have no freedom without the planet's weight to wing against. How Earth itself could come to be only when a whirling wind cloud of dust pledged allegiance as a world circling dependently around a star, and the star blossomed into fire from ash of other stars. And once, at the dark zero of our time, a blaze of revolutionary light exploded out of nowhere, out of nothing, because nothing needed the light, as the brilliance of the light itself needs nothing. The second reading is an excerpt from To Love a Country by Richard Blanco. Declaration of Independence. Interdependence, thank you. It's good. That's the difference. Such has been the patient sufferance. We're a mother's bread, instant potatoes, milk at a checkout line. We're her three children pleading from bubble gum and their father. We're the 3 minutes she steals to page through a tabloid, needing to believe even stars' lives are as joyful and bruised. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. We're her second job, serving an executive absorbed in his Wall Street Journal at a sidewalk cafe shadowed by skyscrapers. We're the shadows of the fortune he won and the family he lost. We're his loss and the lost. We're a father in a coal town who can't mine a life anymore because too much and too little has happened for too long. A history of repeated injuries and usurpations. We're the grit of his main street's blacked out windows and graffitied truths. We're a street in another town lined with royal palms, at home with a Peace Corps couple who collect African art. We're their dinner party of talk of wines, wielded picket signs, and burned draft cards. We're what they know. It's time to do more than read the New York Times, buy fair trade coffee and organic corn. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress. We're the farmer who grew the corn, who plows into his couch as worn as his back at the end of a day. We're his TV set, blaring news having everything and nothing to do with the field dust in his eyes or his son nested in the ache of his arms. We're his son. We're a black teenager who drove too fast or too slow, talked too much or too little, moved too quickly, but not quick enough. We're the blast of the bullet leaving the gun. We're the guilt and the grief of the cop who wished he hadn't shot. We mutually pledge to each other's lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. We're the dead. We're the living, amid the flicker of vigil candlelight. We're in a dim cell with an inmate reading Dostoevsky. We're his crime, his sentence, his amends. We're the mending of ourselves and others. We're the Buddhists serving soup at a shelter alongside a stockbroker. We're each other's shelter and hope. A widow's 50 cents in a collection plate and a golfer's $10,000 pledge for a cure. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We're the cure for hatred caused by despair. We're the good morning of a bus driver who remembers our name. The tattooed man who gives up his seat on the subway. We're every door held open with a smile when we look into each other's eyes the way we behold the moon. We're the moon. We're the promise of one people, one breath, declaring one another, I see you. I need you. I am you. We will now receive the offering.
Now that I know there's a step. Oh, now I'm really tall. Okay. Hi. So this weekend, my family and I did our annual screening of Hamilton the Musical on Disney Plus ever since it first came out in 2020 as our nod to the 4th of July holiday. This Tuesday is the 247th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. And finally, the myths around the founding of this nation are starting to be examined with a critical lens by the general public. With a spate of books and TV shows, and yes, even musicals about people who founded this country, we as a nation are trying to understand what brought us here to this point in history. Before the success of Lin-Manuel Miranda's hit musical, Alexander Hamilton was only famous to me from that Got Milk commercial. Do any of you remember that? From like the 90s? It's fictional radio call-in question, who killed Alexander Hamilton in that famous duel? And the guy, he can't answer. His mouth is full of peanut butter, and he's going, "Urgh." But we find out the answer in the very first song of the musical. It's Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr, who was Vice President of the United States when he killed Hamilton. In the 2.5-hour show, recorded live in 2016, the audience, many of you perhaps, experienced a retelling of American history, starring a cast of mainly people of color, described as America Then, told by America Now. This adaptation of American history is not meant to be an accurate series of events, but an inspirational story of people working hard and persevering through the impossible. Maybe this is what the founders of our country would want us to take away from their story. But as George Washington reflects in the finale of Hamilton, "Let me tell you what I wish I'd known," he said, "when I was young and dreamed of glory. You have no control who lives, who dies, who tells your story. But when you're gone, who remembers your name? Who keeps your flame? Who tells your story?" Historians tell the stories, they build the myths, and the culture picks them up and turns the myths into the narratives that shape the lives of the people. So you might think that this history is plain. The founding fathers freed themselves from the tyranny of taxation without representation, creating a new kind of nation and a government ruled not by a monarch, but a leader elected fairly by the people. This is, of course, the simplified story of the myth of our founding, ignoring the nation's genocidal colonial past and the fact that more than 20% of the people in the newly formed United States were barely considered people at all, but property. In her riveting book, An Indigenous People's History of the United States, Roxanne Dunbar Oritz reminds us again and again and again that white people forming this nation were, in fact, settler colonialists who seized land and territory from the continent's original inhabitants with the intentional use of genocide and genocidal tactics such as force, displacement, and coerced assimilation. She also connected this history to England and most of Europe's transition into capitalism, where the ownership of property and the resources to be squeezed from that property was suddenly a commodity that accumulated wealth. She writes, "In settler colonialism, Europeans export people with the promise of land and private property, so that the land itself becomes the chief commodity in the primitive accumulation of capital." And that was the promise that led settlers to move to the New World, the promise that each person, read adult man, would be given or somehow earn land to own, thus freeing themselves from poverty. But the problem with this promise is, of course, that the land was already occupied by the indigenous North Americans. The myth that the indigenous people of North America and continent were savages and murderous was perpetuated by settlers and governments alike to stoke genocidal reactions. Moving or killing off the native people was the only way that the land would be available for more and more settlers. In fact, the founders of this nation were so caught up in this myth that it is the last line of the grievances listed in the Declaration of Independence. And King George has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, it says, the merciless Indian savages whose own rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In other words, the signers of the Declaration of Independence were claiming that England was encouraging the indigenous people to slaughter the settlers in the same way that the settlers were being encouraged by England to slaughter the indigenous people. All I hear in these stories is, how dare you do what we did to them? How dare you give minorities power? They'll use it to crush us. All I hear is, Mommy, Mommy, little sister's hitting me. Obviously, there's a lot more nuance to it than in this history. There were decades of ignoring pleas for justice and thwarting attempts at creating order. There was the excessive use of force, and there were extrajudicial killings by the military. The birth of this nation freed one set of people, one limited set of privileged people, while it ensured the destruction and erasure of many more people. Indigenous people are still living in a limbo state in this country. In a declaration not of independence, the poet Ralph Salisbury writes about this contradiction. Apparently, I'm my mom's immaculate conceived Irish American son because Social Security time come, my Cherokee dad could not prove he'd been born. He could pay taxes, though, financing troops who'd conquered our land, and could go to jail the time he had to shoot or die in a Caucasian attacker's knife. His father couldn't prove his citizenship, and yet the taxes he paid anyway fed the institutions that historically conquered their homeland while currently enforcing more oppressions. When I was writing this sermon, I listened to hours of constant explosions. There were so many fireworks. I used to love fireworks. We would go congregate by the water where I grew up to watch the annual show and then trek back a mile to where we parked our car and then wait in an hour-long traffic to drive the couple miles home. Now, as my home is surrounded by explosions and I cringe worrying about them waking my children, about all the terrified animals, about someone calling the police on our black neighbors, I worry about the people with PTSD. I worry, and I don't love fireworks so much anymore. What a messed up thing that a celebration of our nation's freedom is to recreate the bombs that were dropped, the destruction they caused, and not even acknowledge the lives that were taken. When we sing the rocket's red glare, bombs bursting in air, we aren't talking about fireworks. We are talking about warfare. They fought, the revolutionaries, they fought for and with their lives. But what were they really fighting for? The myth says taxation without representation, but what I want to know is, were they trying to find freedom from fear? Or did these wealthy and powerful men not want to give up their income? Was this conflict about tea? Or was it about slavery? Or was it about trying to break free from capitalism? Except they didn't know what that was yet, so they just reinvented it in an even stronger and meaner way. When capital is tied tightly to the labor of our bodies, the value of capital is far less if you have to pay your labor force. If the colonies wanted to not be created and treated as capital, they had to begin to face the fact that their wealth and financial structures were based on slave labor. They accuse England of barbaric treatment of them while perpetrating even more barbaric treatment of the people whose labor and bodies they used to create the world they were living in. This land is your land, this land is my land, it's made for you and me. Woody Guthrie wrote those words in the early 1940s and performed them many times throughout his lifetime. Charles Leonard wrote these words about this song. It was described as a Marxist reply to God Bless America, and Guthrie wrote it after an extensive and tough road trip during the Depression era depression-torn 1930s from Texas to Los Angeles and all around the American West. And it's the inclusion of Guthrie's rarely heard original verses that really make the song an urgent and unambiguous demand for equality and human dignity in a nation rife with social justice and patriotic hypocrisy. So the question that he comes down to, I don't know if you've heard that verse, but what it comes down to is, when so many people are starving, was this land really made for you and me? Seems like the America we're told stories about didn't really exist, doesn't exist. And if this land, you mean this country, was made for a certain group of people, was it made for us? Was it made for all? This is my home, we sang in our earlier hymn, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes and dreams, but other lands have hearts beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. This hymn, the patriotic hymn to the Tomb of Finlandia, is called to peace and mutual understanding. But even this hymn, and even more so, this land is your land, are based on the understanding that the land, the place, is owned by people. When we talk about this land and made for, especially understanding that that song was written as a response to God Bless America, it speaks to an understanding that we were meant to be here, all of us. It's our manifest destiny to own part of the North American continent. The indigenous people, of course, would disagree because they know that this land, any land, cannot be owned by any one person or nation or country. The land, the trees, the water, the air is there for everyone. It is here to sustain us all. We are not masters of it. We are part of the ecosystem. We are part of the interdependent web of all existence. Who owns the land? Who owns the country? Who owns the people within it? But whose are we? Whose are we? What is America now but a mishmash of stolen and living culture, subdued by the broken dreams of capitalism and built on stolen land by the hands and the backs of enslaved Black people? How do we face that history? What myths do we live into now? Richard Blanco offers us a picture in the Declaration of Interdependence. Now I can say that one right. Okay. We are overworked and underpaid mothers and fathers. We're wealthy, progressive folks and farmers. We're coal miners. We're Black sons of Black mothers dying in the streets. We are incarcerated. We are a Buddhist serving soup at the shelter alongside a stockbroker. We're each other's shelter and hope. A widow's 50 cents in the collection plate and a golfer's $10,000 pledge for a cure. And we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're the cure for hatred caused by despair. We're the good morning of a bus driver who remembers our name, the tattooed man who gives up his seat on the subway. We're every door held open with a smile, and when we look into each other's eyes, the way we behold the moon. We're the moon. We're the promise of one people, one breath, declaring to one another, I see you, I need you, I am you. I see you, I need you, I am you. May we live this promise every day, every day. Now I invite you to join me in singing Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear, number 1029. If you have a hymnal, it's the blue one. May we remember always that we are an interdependent web of people, of earth, of life. May it be so, and may we live it to be so. Amen.